You want some gum? Hey, you crazy kids, and welcome to Voices in My Closet, the show where no one can hear your screams. Except maybe the neighbors. I hope you all had a fantastic past 2 weeks. We've been off for a week, but we are back now. We are back in action, and I want to talk about something that I think is relatable to everyone. We all have these minor annoyances, just little things that tend to irritate us that certain people do, or just these little things that tend to just pick at us and maybe grind our gears a little bit. And for me, it's a rather extensive list. It's an extensive list of these things that sort of fire me up, that kind of annoy me, and it might make me seem like a very irritated kind of person. And I'm not. I mean, not outwardly anyways. I usually keep most of that to myself. But what I want to do today is talk about my own pet peeves and maybe see if any of these happen to relate to you in any kind of way. If any of these are your pet peeves, let me know in the comments, or even tell me about some pet peeves that I might have missed that really grind your gears, that really fire you up. And I realize that when I talk about some of these, I might be calling out people who I know, whether they're friends or family, who listen to this show, and I just want them to know that despite all of those things, despite any of those things that they might do that is a pet peeve of mine, I still love them the same, despite any of that. So just take this all with a grain of salt. We're going to get into some pet peeves. I've got my trusty phone here with a memo pad so I can keep track of everything, because it's a list, and I would not be able to remember all of them if I didn't have them written down beforehand. But the first and foremost, most annoying thing that anybody can do, and you noticed it in the teaser, is chew with your mouth open. Chewing gum with your mouth open, chewing food with your mouth open. It's just a very disgusting and annoying thing. And the thing is that I was raised in a family where they emphasized good table etiquette, good eating etiquette, and you don't the idea of chewing with your mouth open was always not a good thing, a very impolite thing, and that's what I've grown up knowing, and that's how I always view it. If people are chewing with their mouths open, then it's just kind of gross. You don't want to see the food in their mouths. You don't want to hear the food chomping around mixed with the saliva. It's really gross, and I don't mean to gross any of you out but with any of that, but that is my number one, and it just bothers me. I don't know anybody that does that specifically, but I mean, I have run into people, like whether I'm at a restaurant or at just walking down the street when people are chewing gum, and it's just a very irritating thing that I can never get over. And it's not something where you can just be rude and tell people, chew with your mouth closed, please. It's just one of those things that you hope they realize that is incredibly impolite, but if it becomes a habit, then it's also very difficult to break. So I guess I can't really do anything about that without being extremely rude. Another thing, which a lot of people do, but it kind of varies, is blasting your music with your headphones in, because if you're trying to get somebody's attention, if you say hi to somebody, or if you need to ask somebody a question, then you're going to, and they have their headphones in. Most of the time, at least in my experience, I usually expect people to have it low enough that if somebody needs them, they will be able to hear that person call their name or something. And unfortunately, that is not always the case, and you have to yell their name sometimes, or you have to go up to their face, get their attention, get them to make eye contact with you. So it's bad for your ears too. If you want to go deaf, then by all means do it, but don't blast your music so loud that if you know somebody's going to need your attention, if there's the possibility that somebody will either ask you a question or want to say hi or talk, that's unless you're really antisocial and don't want to deal with it, then that's a completely different story. But when you do it just because you really want to listen to music and you don't know if anybody's going to talk to you, then it almost becomes rude in my opinion. And I'm making all these generalizations, and I apologize again. I'm going to be apologizing a lot. And the next one, is people who don't recycle, people who who don't believe in recycling, I guess. I'm not a big tree hugger myself, but I am the kind of person who is very self-conscious about how much I throw away and how much recycled material I use on a pretty weekly basis, whether it's boxes or paper, anything like that. And I make it a point to have everything in a recycling bin separate. And if the place where I'm living does not have any kind of recycling bin or recycling pickup, I will seek out like a drop-off recycling place so I can drop my stuff. Because first of all, it increases the amount of trash if you just throw away your recyclables, and it's just one thing that you don't need to have lying around or increasing your trash load. And you can also save a lot of money by recycling too. So reduce, reuse, and recycle. And along with recycling and trash and all that is cleanliness in general. I tend to be a very clean person, and not so much in my room. My room is a little cleaner than most rooms, but it can be disorganized at times. But I do know how to clean, and I do know how to clean the shared spaces if I happen to be having guests over and they're using the living room or the bathroom. Then I will make sure that those things are clean, because it's just it's kind of a hospitality type of thing. You want it to be clean, you want it to look presentable in the event that you do have guests over. And I don't have that many guests over very often because I do not live near my friends anymore, unfortunately. But it's always important to keep those. Just make a good first impression when people are coming to your place. You just want to appear that you're conscious about the appearance of where you live and how other people are going to perceive it. I know that you're not supposed to care what other people think, but if it's something that they have to experience with you, then I think it's kind of important. Let's see. How about people who run late? I am very guilty of this, so maybe I'm a bit of a hypocrite saying this. I am late very often. I'm not late to things that are extremely time sensitive. But if it's not something time sensitive, but I tell people I'll be there at this time, it'll usually be like 15 minutes later. But not much later than that. I don't like it when other people are supposed to get to meet up with me at a certain time and they're not good about it. They're not good on their word. It's, again, I'm very hypocritical in that way. And it's kind of one of those things where you don't see it's a problem for yourself until it happens, until somebody else causes some kind of issue with you. So it's people. And you notice that a lot of these are pet peeves that people have, that people do, things that people do that really irk me. It's not so much things in general that irk me. I mean, it's mostly pet peeves. Pet peeves are something that people do that irritate other people. I don't really think there are certain things that are not caused by people or living beings that aren't pet peeves. Another one, if we're continuing with the people theme, is people who don't cover their mouths when they sneeze or they cough. I'm a big advocate for the sneezing in your sleeve type of thing, into the crook of your elbow, not so much the mouth, because you use your hands for all these different things, and if you touch other things after you cough without washing your hands, you're spreading germs. I'm a big germaphobe, as you all know. And it's also like, if you want to shake somebody's hand, you don't want to have sneezed into it beforehand and then shake somebody's hands. It's very unsanitary, and it also just looks very unhygienic, I guess, because if you're sneezing like from a far distance away from anybody and you just sneeze without covering anything up, that's fine. But if you're in the presence of other people and you do it, I mean, you sneeze at 100 miles an hour, and it's just kind of gross. It's kind of gross. I can't lie to you about that. Let's see. People who don't wear deodorant. We all go through puberty at a certain time, and all of our bodies go through changes at around the preteen point of our lives. And with that, especially with men, we tend to get smellier in the armpit region. We tend to sweat more, and there's that smell of body odor that comes with that, and nobody really wants to deal with that. So obviously, if you can't afford deodorant, that's one thing. But if you have access to it, if you can go out and buy deodorant, then buy it and use it on your armpits, because that's just one thing that the smell can carry. You think that your clothes are going to keep it insulated. It's not going to stay insulated. It's going to just keep getting worse, and people are going to smell it. And again, I am sorry if I'm calling out anybody on this. I don't know anybody personally who has this issue, but really, buy yourself some deodorant, because if you're a teenager and you don't wear deodorant, then you should probably start wearing deodorant, because nobody's going to tell you that you don't smell. People are just going to, maybe keep their distance a little bit. Again, I apologize for all of this so much, but I think it needs to be said. Moving on. How about people who say, no offense? When you say that and then proceed to say something that is offensive, there's almost no point in saying no offense, because if somebody is going to be offended by it, it's almost as if when you say that, you do mean to offend somebody, but you think that they're not going to think that if you say no offense. It's really not any consolation if you say that before saying whatever rude thing you're going to say. And I get that a lot in YouTube comments when people say, no offense, but you suck. And I think, well, it's still an offensive thing, and by saying no offense, that's not going to make me feel any better about it. And it's not easy to face me on those anymore, because I hear them so often. But you might as well just not include the words no offense, and just say what you want to say. Either that, or don't say anything at all. It goes back to the whole, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it. So such is the way of people who think that they're really helping people by saying that, but not really. People who ride or walk in the street when there is a perfectly good sidewalk right next to them. If the sidewalk is beaten up, I understand that, but there are people who ride their bikes in the middle of the street or walk in the middle of the street when there are clearly cars that are coming up, if it's in a residential area, especially. And you can easily just move over to the side of the road. Sometimes there's enough curb space for bikes and for people walking, or just use the sidewalk. There are sidewalks for a reason. It has the word walk in it. And even bikers, sometimes there are even bike lanes, or there's nobody on the sidewalk, so a biker could go on the sidewalk. It's okay. I don't think anybody's going to have an issue with that. No one wants to be clipped by a car. No car wants to clip a biker or a walker. So now let's just use the things that are given to us instead of not. Along with people walking places, also escalators. There are some people who are in a rush to get up the escalator, so they walk up the escalator, or they skip stairs up the escalator, which is fine. I do that. But there are other people who stand. Like, if I'm tired, I will stand on the escalator, but I will also stand on the right side up against the railing so that people can go up on the left side if they're in a hurry. Unfortunately, not everybody does this, and they just stand in the middle of the escalator with no care in the world, and not realizing that there are people behind them who might potentially need to get somewhere quickly. There's a whole system where you should be on the right side if you're not moving, and left side if you need to move. And maybe this is kind of an unspoken rule that not a lot of people know about, but I know about it. And I know several other people who are familiar with this same method, but not everybody listens to that. And also when people have a lot of stuff with them on the escalator and they're sort of blocking the entire area and people can't get to where they're going because they're completely blocked off, that can also be a bit of a pet peeve. Also, passive-aggressive behavior. There are people who are extremely nice, but whenever some kind of inconvenience happens or they feel threatened or offended, they won't act. They'll try not to act like they're offended or they've been inconvenienced. They will have like this really sarcastically happy and content attitude, even though they are not happy by any means. So that's one that's very difficult to get around, because you can't straight up tell somebody, hey, you're being really rude. I don't appreciate you acting so passive aggressively. It's kind of one of those things of, it's almost like holding a grudge, kind of the way people act in that way. And it's very difficult, I think, to cooperate with people who are incredibly passive aggressive. Grammar and punctuation is another one. I am very much a grammar Nazi, and you might recall, if you've known me as far back as 2014, I believe it was, when I did mispronunciations that will make you cringe. I'm really big into pronunciation, correct grammar usage, correct punctuation usage, and if I could edit all of the misspelled signs in the world for a living, I would take that job in a heartbeat. If that was a thing, then I would do it. I would go around the world, maybe around the country, where all because English is my strongest language. I'd sooner correct all the English signs in the world that are misspelled. But I am very into that. I'm very into grammar. I mean, if you wanted to invite me over just to correct grammar on internet websites or something like that, I'd be more than happy to do that. I don't call people out all the time for grammar. Sometimes I do. If you use a word that's not real, or if you say something like, oh, I could care less, when really the term should be I couldn't care less. There's a whole bit on that, which I'm not going to get into, but it's couldn't care less, unless you actually do mean could care less. Like, I still care, but there's a potential for caring less. Again, I'm getting into the bit, and I'm not going to get into the bit, so sorry about any of that. Also, when, and this happens a lot in any kind of job or any group that you happen to be a part of, whether it's a mailing list, there are people who are part of mailing lists who don't want to be part of mailing lists, and they will reply all to ask to be taken off this message chain. And they're just adding another message for everyone else to get. Nobody wants to get more messages than they need to, and doing that just adds it on. And then sometimes other people think, oh, if they're doing it, then that's probably how I'm supposed to unsubscribe also. So they will send the same thing, reply all, and we're just bombarded with more messages that we don't need. It's completely unnecessary. Okay, scraping your teeth with a fork when you're eating. This is something that I used to be guilty of, but then I realized how bad it is for your teeth, and you hear it because when people eat, they kind of smile when they pull the fork out of their mouth. It's just supposed to be your lips. Your lips are supposed to take the food off of your fork or your spoon. And when you do that, you're grinding your teeth, you're scraping your teeth, and that can cause enamel to erode, and you don't want any of that. Talk to a dentist; they'll say the same exact thing. I sound like a mom or just a really judgmental person with all of these. Again, I am sorry, but we are nearing the end of this. Another one is when people leave lights on and don't turn that, like in a room, when you leave electronics on in a room where you're not using, or you're not even in the house, but you leave it on and somebody else finds it. First of all, you're wasting electricity, and it's just unnecessary. You're wasting something that does not need to be wasted, and when you're not even using it, it's just one of those inconveniences that nobody really wants to deal with. It's the same with running water when you're not in a room and you don't plan on using the water anytime soon. And second to last is blasting music in your car, and you have the bass turned up and everyone else can hear it. And really, I think you can hear it pretty well. Do you really need everyone else to hear it? Do you need to roll down your windows in 40-degree weather just so everybody else can hear that? That's something that kind of grinds my gears, and I don't really like getting into that kind of stuff because I'm not into blaring music. I like my hearing. I think my hearing is pretty adequate, and I'd rather not ruin that. Just one of those things, you know. And last but not least is public displays of affection. I'm not a huge fan of it. I've never been a huge fan of it in relationships. I'm fine with hand-holding in public. There's nothing wrong with that. Hugging in public, fine. But when people are making out in public, I think it's kind of disgusting. And I'll never say get a room, but it's, the people who say that are obviously uncomfortable with it. And I won't outwardly tell people, I'm very uncomfortable with you making out with somebody in public. And it's something that you can say for later. If you're madly in love, then that's great. Congratulations. But there are times where you can show there's certain public displays of affection that are easier to accept, like hand holding or hugging, whereas kissing is something that should be more of a private display of affection, I guess. In my personal opinion, maybe I'm a little conservative in that way, not politically conservative, but in that way. So that is my list of pet peeves, and I hope I have not gotten many of you too upset about any of these. Hopefully I could relate to a lot of you in this way. I'm trying to see if there are any that I might have missed. I don't think I did, but if I did happen to offend you, I sincerely apologize for the umpteenth time today. I don't mean to offend any of you. I just mean to let you all know, that's something that I need to get off my chest, something that I've never told people, all these pet peeves before, and it's something that I just think I had to let some steam off. It gets me fired up, so I have to let some steam off. If you catch my drift, if you continue to watch my videos, despite of everything that I might have offended you with, then I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I hope maybe some of you enjoyed this video and could relate to it. Again, let me know in the comments if you have any pet peeves similar to mine or other ones too. Who knows? There could be a lot more that I did not even touch upon, but I am curious to find out what might irk you, what might grind your gears. I hope you all have a great week. I will see you next week.